You're out on the edge of the world if you're on top of Everest. You can speak on a satellite phone, yeah, but that doesn't mean anybody can get to you.
You can have great guides, you can have an excellent route set, but when you are dealing with the highest mountain on Earth, you're still a long ways from anywhere.
26,000 feet does not feel that good on the brain or the body. Now we got a little snowstorm rolling in here, which might be hampering our summit bid. We have one chance at this, and that's leaving tonight. We're all hopeful that we can make it. Otherwise, we're going back down tomorrow, regardless.
Okay, we're ready.
There's a reason that some of this has never been done before. We're trying to go to the highest reaches of Mount Everest to install the highest weather station in the world. To try to do science up at some of these elevations, this is an added challenge. And we're pushing the envelope.
Every spring in the Himalayas, a temporary town comes to life. For the next 2 months, this will be the highest village on Earth. Everest's South Base Camp. At 17,500 feet, it's at the extreme edge of where the atmosphere can sustain human life. For decades, climbers have gathered here, each preparing for their chance at Everest's summit. This season, one group is here with an entirely different goal.
Hello, namaste. My name's Tom.
To get a better understanding of how this mountain impacts all of us.
We know literally nothing about what goes on above 5,000 meters. And yet it's this fantastic window into a portion of the atmosphere where, granted, not a lot of people live, but that's critically important to what goes on in the rest of the world.
Paul Majewski will be leading a team of more than 30 scientists in some of the most challenging conditions on Earth to compile the first complete portrait of the iconic mountain.
The National Geographic Rolex Perpetual Planet Expedition is the largest scientific expedition ever conducted on Everest.
Among those braving the mission will be geologists, glacial experts, and a biology team. Most ambitious of all, 2 climate scientists are here to install the highest weather station the world has ever known, as close as they can get to the summit.
Preparing for every expedition is different. This one was going to very high elevation. The plan was to not only create a scientific program that would be multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, but find the right people to do this.
One of the first to get the call was glaciochemist and mountaineer Mario Potocki.
It was beyond the dreams, going to Everest. So I said, of course, such adventure, yes, please. But doing work at that elevation, 8,000 meters, in that zone, that could be challenging.
Mario's mission is to collect a core from the highest ice on the planet. Inside the ice is a record of several thousand years' worth of climate on Everest. It contains critical pieces of missing information to help scientists understand climate change today. But the thin atmosphere near the summit presents Mario with a new challenge. To safely get to the top of one of the most extreme environments in the world, the scientists need a different kind of expert. Pete Athens has made dozens of expeditions to the Himalayas, starting 40 years ago.
I just love the feeling of being stripped down to just very, very basic elements. When you get out into the wild conditions and wild places on Earth, let's just say, the simplicity of life becomes much more forward.
Incredibly, Pete has summited Everest 7 times, leading teams of climbers all the way to the top.
You find out what they're made of, what your team is made up of, and what you're made of as an individual. And to see if you have the capability and aspirations, energy, physiology to rise to the occasion.
But this expedition is like none other Pete has ever attempted.
They're trying to commit to getting those takeaways from the rooftop of the world that we don't know. That's the new terra incognita. That's what we don't know. It just hasn't been done.
Everest has always held its secrets close. Just 100 years ago, the Himalayas were such unknown territory that the maps were mostly blank spaces. It took more than 3 decades, from the first attempt to summit Everest in 1921, before Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay would be the ones to finally touch the highest point on Earth. That first success inspired thousands of others to try their luck.
I think the enhancements in everything from the clothing we wear to our communications equipment have made climbing Everest easier. However, on the worst days, it's still impossible for even the best climbers in the world.
At base camp, Pete is heading up the safety and climbing logistics for the scientists, none of whom have ever attempted to summit Everest before. One of the first features they'll have to navigate is the notoriously dangerous Khumbu Icefall.
For dealing with the Khumbu Icefall, we set up a simulator at base camp out in the less complicated icefall, very close to base camp. We set up some difficult ladders for them, getting a feel for spikes in their crampons and how to manage the rungs on the ladder.
To study the impacts of pollution on Everest glaciers, Inka Koch needs to collect snow from above the icefall.
Once I decided that I would go up to 6,500 meters on Everest and through the Khumbu Icefall, which is quite treacherous, I got really scared and was super excited, but also really quite intimidated.
Setting up fixed lines, practicing with ice screws and other types of anchors that they may not be familiar with, and then running them through, for lack of a better term, an obstacle course.
Just whatever works more efficiently. I mean, this is a pretty...
To the point where they just felt less intimidated by the physical environment.
You have to have a lot of respect going through Khumbu Icefall. That was the biggest thing in our heads, because the safety issue, it's a very unpredictable place.
The icefall is the most active, shifting part of a giant, constantly moving 10-mile-long glacier. Base camp lies directly on top of its lowest curve. To get to the summit from Everest's south side, climbers follow the glacier up the mountain, stopping to acclimate for several nights at camps along the way. The Khumbu is the highest glacier in the world. To better understand how it's impacted by a warming climate, expedition scientists will be studying it from many different angles.
One of the big scientific questions this expedition is answering is how climate change in particular is happening in the high mountain regions. How quickly are the glaciers changing? How quickly are they reducing their size and their volume?
To answer these questions, National Geographic geographer Alex Tate is heading up a team to map the giant glacier in its entirety, including base camp. The highly detailed map will be a snapshot of the ice form today, so they'll be able to track changes in the future. They'll be using a combination of digital scans and photographs to stitch together 3D images of the environment. Chris Milburn's job is to scan and photograph every square inch in sight.
If we can pull off this scan, I'm pretty convinced that we can pull it off anywhere. This is a really difficult environment, and it's really hard to climb around, so we can only take pictures from so many angles on foot. Drones really help us give the overall sphere an extra bit of resolution, an extra bit of perspective on Everest Base Camp. We're using LiDAR, which is a laser scanning tool, and this laser scanner shoots out 2 million points per second, taking individual measurements every single time that it shoots out one of those lasers. It does that in a 360-degree sphere and measures everything that it can see. What we then do is we take high-resolution images to paste onto those measurements that the laser scanning provides.
To map the entire extent of the glacier, the team takes to the skies using LiDAR mounted underneath a helicopter.
Having a scan of a glacier means that you can measure the exact recession a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and see exactly what the difference is.
The way that we can understand the impact of warming in the Himalayas is largely through the extent of glaciers.
After the North and South Poles, the Himalayas have more frozen water than anywhere in the world.
The high mountain areas are critically important because those are our water towers. Those are the places where a tremendous amount of water is stored.
Nearly a quarter of the world's population depends on that glacial water to survive.
Downstream from high mountain Asia, we have hundreds of millions of people who rely on the water from the rivers that flow out.
The glaciers that hold the precious resource have been shrinking at an alarming rate over the past few decades. Since 2000, melting in these mountains has doubled. Without a plan for what's ahead, most of South Asia could be facing catastrophe. The Himalayas are losing around 8 billion tons of ice every year. This creates two different dangers. If the glaciers disappear, the water supply for more than 1 billion people will be at risk. And as the meltwater rushes down from the mountains, there's a more immediate danger: deadly flash flooding. Until now, there have been few warning systems in place to predict disaster and provide life-saving information for people below. Tom Matthews and Baker Perry are here to try and change that. Their plan is to install a network of weather stations at 5 carefully chosen locations along the main climbing route. The last station will be placed as close to the summit as the team can get. All the stations will have instruments measuring temperature, humidity, air pressure, and wind speed. This network will produce a constant stream of near real-time data to help create accurate weather forecasts. One of the lower stations will be installed near base camp, with part of it perched on the ice itself.
These will just hold the mast. Oh, good. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
We knew it would get harder and harder as we went up to install these weather stations.
Yeah, sign everything.
So we knew early on that the Sherpa team were going to be instrumental in this, that we would have to work quickly and efficiently as a team to deploy those weather stations as fast as possible.
Clearly to have labels. Yeah.
Once the base camp science had been done, we could then start focusing on moving higher.
Does everybody have a mask and regulator?
The fear of going through the icefall and the worry of columns of ice collapsing, of avalanches coming down from the slopes. It was a little bit overwhelming at times to think about the ordeal that was ahead, or the challenge that was ahead.
Over the next 4 weeks, the high-altitude team of scientists and Sherpas will work their way up from base camp ever closer to Everest's summit. They will set up weather stations and collect ice cores at key locations along the way. Camp 1 is just above the icefall. Camp 2 sits in the middle of a huge natural amphitheater filled with massive amounts of snow. Camp 3 is perched at 23,000 feet.
You can barely believe there's a camp up there. It's only as you're ascending to Camp 3 that you can see that there's this kind of notch carved out, and there's an area that you can pitch tents.
From there, they'll climb up to Camp 4 in the South Col.
You're still looking up at the top of the mountain there, and from the South Col, you've pretty much got to climb an equivalent height of the tallest mountain in England.
The balcony is the last resting stop before the final few hundred yards to the summit.
4 a.m. we're about to start up the icefall proper. Hopefully we'll get through it as quick as we can and emerge safely at Camp 1.
All good.
Excited.
Yeah.
The first phase of the climb is a test of skill and nerves.
In recent years, certainly the most fatalities have taken place in the Khumbu Icefall. It's our greatest technical challenge. It's the one where you have the fewest options for putting a safe and efficient route through.
So we got the first ladder of the day. Just going up on the ladder.
You're always on edge for sounds and for what might be coming at you. If the hazards weren't there of a block of ice falling or an avalanche occurring, it'd be a lot more fun. I mean, it's an obstacle course to go through.
You're aware of the risk and the kind of Russian roulette nature of it. Every crack, every rumble from up above is accompanied by quite the same level of fear.
I'm hopeful that we'll be able to understand more about the glacier after this expedition, and maybe we'll be able to come up with some theory as to what exactly is going on there. What makes one good day turn into someone else's bad day within 24 hours? How do we predict that if we can?
The dangers on Mount Everest are natural and expected. But this year, there's another hazard, one more difficult to accept.
It's a bucket list for many, turning fatal this year. Reports of inexperience and overcrowding emerging in one of the deadliest seasons to hit Mount Everest.
We were unlucky enough to experience Everest in a very, very busy season. People are only moving higher up on the mountain when the weather is okay to do it. There weren't many windows that were suitable for climbing.
We're kind of at this bottleneck in the icefall where there's 2 vertical ladders and they're a little bit of a tough climb for some people. So there's 150 people standing here under a serac. We're kind of standing back from it a little bit. It's not the safest situation.
We're gonna be here a while, so we might as well get comfortable, appreciating the virtue of patience.
My fingers getting a little cold, my toes getting cold, but it'll get over. It's all good.
That's a very charming place. It's hard to describe because you feel all pressure, all tension, emotional tension, because you have like hanging gigantic pieces of ice overhead. But then when you just over everything in Camp 1, you just like think, oh my God, that was an amazing experience.
Heavy breathing, short breath, but now I feel very good. It's very rewarding. We feel like we did something good today.
As the high-altitude team approaches elevations increasingly dangerous to human life.
2 types of surveys we'll be doing: water filtration.
Back at base camp.
Collecting water samples, and also doing things like turning over rocks. looking underneath and seeing what's there.
Biology lead Tracy Simon and her husband Anton Simon are studying life forms better suited to survive up here.
The biodiversity of this area is really poorly understood. This will be the first comprehensive biodiversity survey performed on Mount Everest.
We are at 5,300 meters. We are trying to find some of the highest life forms we can.
Really interesting. There's much more life up here than meets the eye at first glance, that's for sure. So here's some tussock grass, some masters, and these were all growing under the pebbles and rocks you see here. And here there is a very delicate little plant. It's a little alpine garden here.
There are even tiny insects known as bristletails, related to the common silverfish.
He's got these long filaments sticking out. That's a bristletail.
The drastic changes these specialized species are facing up here could provide an early indicator of what's in store for the rest of the world as our climate warms.
We're getting a window into what the rest of the world is starting to experience and likely to experience in growing proportions. As the ice is melting and everything's moving uphill, snow lines are rising, the biosphere itself is rising to occupy that space. But how rapidly is it rising? Which species are rising faster? What's being left behind?
As the high-altitude team moves farther up the mountain, the greatest danger they must face comes from the very thing they're determined to measure, the weather.
The fears are always the uncontrollable elements, the weather. That's always the one that we try to keep an eye on the most so we don't put our team into any type of hazardous jeopardy. People are well prepared to deal with the cold, but it's really more having the ability to deal with the wind.
We changed our plans this morning. We were originally going to leave tomorrow, but the weather window dictates that really it's most sensible to leave today.
I think we're all excited to go up, but obviously a little apprehensive with just health and altitude and crowds and weather, but this is time to go.
As the scientist and Sherpa team responds to the changing conditions, Pete keeps close track of all the teams from base camp.
I'm always conflicted about having people under my care on Everest, especially when I'm not going above base camp, and because as well as somebody might understand the mountain, the natural world doesn't always know who the experts are.
Pete Athens knows better than most how unforgiving Everest can be. He was on the mountain on one of its darkest days. On May 10th, 1996, he was making his 5th ascent up Mount Everest. He had reached Camp 3 for the night when he received the news.
We heard at about 11 p.m. at night that there were still 16 people who hadn't made it back down to the high camp at Camp 4 at 26,000 feet. We dropped everything that we had at that point and worked our way back up to Camp 4 to assist people.
Earlier that day, several teams had set out to make their summit attempt. But a series of delays with rope lines and crowding slowed many members of the teams, and some were still pushing towards the top late into the afternoon. As the day inched closer to night, a powerful blizzard pounded the mountain.
There were extreme high winds, there was some snowfall, poor visibility.
Unable to locate the safety of Camp 4, the climbers were trapped out in the open on the mountain. 8 people lost their lives. Preventing tragedies like these is just one more motivation for the weather station team.
Being able to predict the weather with greater accuracy and avoid surprises could potentially save lives.
We are at Camp 3 today. We just came from Camp 2, mostly like vertical uphill. But we had a really kind of mixed day today with hot sun and to the snowy ending, and now it's getting better here.
So the Sherpa team will meet them at 5:30 at Camp 3.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, Tiksa, that's a good time for them to start, and they will then get to the South Col pretty early.
I'm going to see you tomorrow.
Subhratri, base camp standing by.
Cold start, but we're nearly there now. Sherpa just joined us from Camp 2, about to saddle up, start the oxygen flowing, and long climb to Camp 4.
Good up. Almost the South Pole. So you're heading higher.
Many times I was thinking about what the early pioneers of Everest climbing must have been thinking at different stages of the climb. The uncertainty of what was ahead, and not knowing at any point whether perhaps the route would become unclimbable. I don't know how those early climbers managed to suppress those voices of fear and doubt as they were pressing on towards the summit.
This team has more in its sights than the summit. Mario is finally within reach of the ice core he's come to Everest for.
We are at the Camp 4 South Col. 30 minutes from here there is a beautiful blue ice. I believe it's very old glacier, and I'd love to drill a couple meters on the top and meter or two on the bottom. I hope that will work.
Ice cores are like a big detective story. We work with historians, archaeologists, atmospheric chemists. Locked in those ice cores is everything that happened in the atmosphere.
Never before has an ice core been collected from this height.
It's like opening new window for science for us. It's absolutely unknown territory.
Now into Everest's death zone, above 26,000 feet. There is no margin for error.
Yeah, it's windy here. Yeah. Kind of windy.
You'll have literally only a couple of hours in which you can exert yourself enough to drill down, pull the sample back out again, get it into a container, and there are a lot of places you can make a mistake.
Whenever you drill, it's never the same type of ice. So we didn't know really what we may expect. Just very first bite in ice, when the drill starts rotating and you see it's just going deeper and penetrating ice, it's just like, yeah, it's going to work. That was the most wonderful moment actually, because all stress just gone. I remember I just like took my mask off. So like, yes, it's going to happen. So like everybody's happy, like, hey Mario, it's good ice. I was like, yeah, that's fantastic. So like everybody start work really fast.
Just 3 times more and we finish.
With every foot of ice drilled, the core reaches further back into time. 30 feet could mean Mario has reached ice that will reveal secrets around 5,000 years old.
I'm so extremely happy. My God, it's going... Well, we may finish soon because it's getting more and more difficult, but it's fantastic. The ice quality is wow.
Okay, that's number 7. Perfect. Good. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
In order to make better predictions for the future, you need to go back in time to see, under a naturally colder climate, were there more storms or fewer storms? Was there more precipitation coming in or less?
In a valley below, another team hopes to collect more information to fill in the pieces of this ancient climate. But their challenge isn't ice. It's water. Geologist Mary Hubbard and Ananta Gajarel head up the effort to collect mud samples containing life forms from centuries ago, 30 feet deep in the lake.
So our project here is to take rafts and go out on this lake to take a sediment core. We've got 2 boats that we will raft together in catamaran style. And then we'll go under the boat. Under the boat? Under the boat.
On an annual basis, streams are flowing into the lake. They bring sediment with them. The sediment's deposited. There's also windblown pollen that comes from trees in the area or plants in the area, and that's deposited in the lake. So that's all recorded.
In this context of changing climate, everything we can get our hands on to figure out how climate is behaving through the time is really important. It gives you like a tape recording of the climate, of the surrounding, of almost everything at that time. It's really important to understand the past to predict what's going to happen in the future.
So can you pick this up and hold go vertical in the hole? The core is just a weighted device with a plexiglass tube that will collect the sediment that we drop, and gravity takes it to the bottom.
There's a small weight that sits on a pipe, and you pull it up about 8 to 10 inches and you drop it back down, and you do that multiple times, and it hammers that core tube down into the mud.
Come on, yeah, I can pull it going down. Yeah. Almost everything in the mountains is difficult. Because you are not at your full strength at that altitude.
Keep it vertical. Muddy. Keep it vertical.
The sediment was much heavier than I anticipated. You have to keep the sediment barrel, the core barrel, vertical until you get it all capped and sealed, which actually happens on shore.
Yeah, we're gonna set it.
Well, when we pulled the lake core up, you can't quite see what's inside. It's a little bit like getting a Christmas present that's wrapped in paper. It's not until we get it back to the laboratory that you then really see those nice layers of the core.
A lot of people up on the route.
At 26,000 feet, the high-altitude team is facing their one chance to enter the most extreme reaches of the planet. They'll only be able to spend a few hours here to install the final weather station. A year of preparation all comes down to this.
Finish packing a drill, refill our bottles, because around 11 p.m. we are going to the summit. Drill and put weather station, the highest ones, both. Fingers crossed.
Suiting up, harness on, crampons on. About to start the final 850 meters to the summit. Something like that. There's not a breath of wind. We couldn't ask for more at this stage. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit nervous. I am. I guess there's nothing left to do but play some music and dance.
Okay. Yeah. You need Adrian to turn me up the juice? Yeah.
Just going into the unknown in the middle of the night, recognizing that we're totally dependent on our down suits, on our crampons, on our oxygen to literally keep us alive is a pretty humbling feeling.
Okay, guys, let's go. We're ready.
And we're heading upwards. We can already see climbers ahead, and we can even see some returning. And it feels like a bit, kind of like heading into a war zone. You're very much aware, at least I was, that it's an alien environment that's not really built for us.
You lose your feeling the space pretty much, and having headlamp and like blowing snow, you see like a tiny stars just passing just next to your eyes, and then you see back of your climbing partner.
Beautiful morning though,
There was a concern in the back of my mind about the number of climbers.
from the South Col to the balcony, even in the dark, you see like huge line of lights and pretty much no one's moving.
The congestion on the climb was of the sorts that they realized it was going to perhaps put the team in jeopardy and or put the objectives at jeopardy.
We're fast, a bit slow. We're following a big plan now. Otherwise, it's tough. Tough going. Too many people. We're at the balcony. A huge line of people. Slow going. This is made for some really cold hands and toes versus the surfaces. So the movement so slow.
We were very well aware that this was a problem that was unfolding around us. Given how long it had taken us in that queue, we would not have enough time because we would not have enough oxygen.
Just 1,500 feet from Everest summit, the team faces a decision. Wait for the route to clear and hope they can make it to the top, or build a weather station right here on the balcony.
I think that idea appeared in Panuru's head that probably we'll have to work at the balcony.
The ultimate decision was made by the lead Sherpa, Panuru, and he was the most experienced person, number one. And number two, he was there.
What just my mask totally iced up. Couldn't breathe.
They were feeling like they weren't going to get enough margin of safety to have 2 to 3 hours to do an install of equipment up there and then get back down safely with the oxygen supplies that they currently had.
Knowing how much work they have ahead of them, the team agrees. This is where they'll put the highest weather station.
Part of me was certainly a bit disappointed and not to have the chance to go up a little higher, but none of us was there solely to summit the mountain. We had important scientific objectives to complete, and that was our task.
Yeah. We're waiting to drill back to warm up. It's too cold.
We realized that the batteries were in fact too cold to operate the drill. They just did not have enough power.
So we try to warm them up, the down jackets, stuff under armpits. Hopefully that'll work. The sun's about to come up. It can help a bit too. When it's too cold with the word. I guess it's about -25. And we fail it, the batteries fail it. So we just have to wait.
A real sense of panic set in.
The team waits for an hour. And then the battery sparks to life.
So once the batteries have started working, we're straight into installing the station. And then we start doing the things we've been preparing for. So we start attaching the sensors in the order that makes most sense. So we're sliding them on, securing them, and the Sherpa are doing this themselves because we've run through this so many times.
Radio 4, North 1, North Pole. What's over? Temperature? Sit on. Charging. Okay. Free at top. You can put it. Okay. So we just finished installing this weather station. And now to be the highest that's been installed. The balcony, Everest. Fantastic work from the Sherpa team. We're going up really quickly. Really excited to start looking at data that's coming from this. It's transmitting now up to Washington, D.C. We wouldn't have been able to achieve anything like we did without the help of that incredible Sherpa team. This is their home, and they had allowed us into their home to conduct this science and allowed us to come back out safely.
Everest is an amazing place. It's iconic. From our point of view, scientifically, this was a great opportunity to make some contributions to the field of environmental change and climate change that really couldn't be made anywhere else.
The expedition has been a great success, but the scientific work is just beginning. The samples and data collected will drive years of breakthrough research.
This ice at the South Col is different because it's been formed by crystals that's rounded by very strong wind. It's very new ice. I've never seen anything like that before.
Early examinations of the ice core show something surprising. The most recent layer, on the very top of the core, is already 2,000 years old. This points to significant surface loss on the glacier, even above 26,000 feet. It's a signal that human activity has impacted the entire surface of the planet, including its highest reaches. In Montana, Mary Hubbard's lake core analysis indicates the same warming trend.
Once you have it open, you can see the layers, but you still have the question, so how old is this? How much time is represented in this bit of mud that I'm holding in my hands? And we now have a sense that it's probably just shy of 2,000 years old that's represented there.
Okay. Nice, neat layering, right, straight, all the way down.
The different sections of the lake core reveal the region's plant and animal life as it was hundreds and thousands of years ago.
The pollen samples indicate that more recent times have had a higher abundance of tree species, whereas the older time period had more grasses and shrubs. And the forests have been able to move a little bit higher up the valleys.
Forest is coming in. So that's consistent with the retreat of the glacier.
We want to understand where that might go in the future.
The trees are coming from lower elevation.
Data is now streaming 24/7 from the highest mountain on Earth, pointing the way to the future.
So from what we've seen so far, it looks like the snow and ice may be more sensitive to melt and therefore to climate warming than we previously thought before we went up there and put these weather stations in.
The bottom line is that if we understand what's in store for us, where changes will occur, what sort of changes, we can make better predictions and we can plan better and we can begin to organize our lives so that in some ways our quality of life could be better in the future than it is now.
100 years ago, George Mallory, the early mountaineer, was famously asked, why go to Everest? And he very famously answered, because it's there. I'm not satisfied with that. I say go to Mount Everest because it's informative. It can tell us things, it can tell us stories. It can help us understand the world we live in.
At the gateways to the poles lie two of the harshest environments for wildlife on the planet. South Georgia Island above Antarctica, and Canada's frigid north below the Arctic Circle. Two vastly different ecosystems, where survival requires cunning, persistence, and the ability to adapt to an ever-changing climate.
My name's Bertie Gregory and I'm a National Geographic wildlife filmmaker.
This is the story of one photographer's quest to capture these wild environments firsthand.
Five or 6 days sailing ahead of us, 870 miles.
Right, it's cast off on the bow and cast off on the stern. We're on our way.
Wildlife photographer Bertie Gregory begins his polar journey in the Falkland Islands. But this isn't his final destination. He's heading southeast to one of the last pieces of land between here and Antarctica. The island of South Georgia has no permanent human population, but it's full of wildlife. Until the boat gets closer, he'll only see a few travelers along the way.
Hey, dude!
Much of his time will be spent below deck.
I thought I'd give you a bit of a boat tour, and I'm going to do this quick because otherwise I'm going to be sick. We're currently in the forepeak right at the front of our boat. All the kit is packed in with pillows so that as the boat rocks and rolls in the swell, it's all kept nice and snug. This is where I sleep. This is Barry Bucket, Barry my sick bucket. Me and Barry have got to know each other quite well over the last few days. Oh, jeez. This is the shower. Can't say I've used it much. That's why I smell absolutely disgusting. Let's go outside. Welcome to the South Atlantic Ocean.
Here, the Antarctic circumpolar current makes an already angry sea even more daunting. It's the largest wind-driven current on Earth, and it brings sudden shifts in temperature and visibility.
Wow, day 4. And we bumped into this really weird, eerie sea fog. And, you know, it's fine for us. We've got GPS, we've got sonar, all that, you know, modern technology that lets you navigate in this. But imagine what it must have been like for the first people coming to South Georgia. Somebody up the bow, maybe someone up the mast, just spotting for icebergs.
The extreme winds and cold here are huge deterrents for human life. But the ACC actually creates the perfect conditions for wildlife. The current is very nutrient-rich, and the underwater topography surrounding South Georgia channels these nutrients up to the surface, kicking off a food chain bonanza.
This is nuts! It's like someone's turned the wildlife tap on. Having not seen much for 150 miles or something, all of a sudden stuff starts coming out the woodwork. Now that's a pretty exciting sign that we're getting close to South Georgia. Everything's starting to get wilder and wilder. And there it is. It doesn't look real.
Cold and desolate in the south, glaciers miles long. And the north, covered in grass as tall as a human. Bertie and his team have arrived to South Georgia Island. But docking on this rugged shore requires a careful approach.
3 rules in general. Rule number 1, don't hit anything. Rule number 2, if you must hit something, hit it slowly. Rule number 3, don't hit anything.
But the animals returning home to this island are built for arrival. After months out at sea, macaroni penguins are reaching the end of a 300-mile journey and face a tough welcome home. Like all the other species gravitating towards this island, they have come here for one very important reason: to breed and raise their chicks. This is the season that penguins, elephant seals, albatross, and fur seals all make their return from their open ocean wanderings to start a new generation on land.
This place is so much like Jurassic Park. I kind of feel like we're going to get picked off by a velociraptor at any moment. The only difference is the velociraptors are a lot fatter, a bit more grumpy, and they're called fur seals. Okay, we're going. Sorry. Didn't seem very pleased to see us. They're all jacked up on hormones because it's the height of the breeding season for them. We definitely got to keep an eye out for them up in this tussock grass, because the seal you can see is fine, it's the seal that you don't see. There's the one we can see, he's fine. Hey dude!
With no natural predators on land, these seals have no fear. They're not even bothered by the occasional human.
You got a friend, Birdie. You're too close to focus on. Got to back up. I don't slobber on the lens.
Not long ago here, the water ran red with the blood of Antarctic fur seals. From millions, only 400 survived. When Captain James Cook first arrived here in 1775, he thought he had finally found Antarctica. But after rounding the southern tip, he realized it was just an island. He was so angry, he even named it Cape Disappointment. A consequence of Captain Cook's discovery was that he sent word back to England that the place was packed full of seals. The first boats arrived just a few years later. Living conditions were terrible. But business was great. 112,000 pelts in just one season alone. By the 20th century, the whalers had followed suit. Boats got bigger, and so did their captures. The largest whale ever recorded on our planet was a 110-foot-long female blue whale. She was processed in the brand new station of Grytviken in 1912. South Georgia became the principal location for all land-based whaling in the Southern Hemisphere. Over 175,000 whales were killed. The seal population was devastated. And the boats brought an invasion of egg-eating rats that ran riot through the bird colonies.
Yeah, the scale of this place is just epic. It's just massive.
Today, only skeletons of South Georgia's whaling stations remain.
It's so eerie. And to think that we had the understanding that there's only so hard you can push populations of whales and seals, but we just kept going and going and going, because it was all about short-term economic gain, not long-term sustainability.
Hunted to extinction, whaling became financially unviable. One by one, the stations were shut down. All this destruction led to a reckoning. Today, South Georgia is a protected area. The biggest island rat eradication program in history was launched, and the island was declared rat-free in 2018. Many of the birds have bounced back in big numbers. Fur seals have sprung back from just a few hundred to over 3 million.
This contrast sums up South Georgia. This place was once all about death, and now it's jam-packed full of life. Yeah, rebounded in just unbelievable proportion. Ah, listen to that!
Whales are just now beginning to return.
Southern right whales are one of the longest living animals, and so there's a good chance that one of these whales was alive whilst whaling was going on South Georgia. So to know that they're now coming back and they're having a go at some mating, it's great news for the whales, great news for South Georgia, and obviously great news for the whole concept of a second chance.
It was less than 100 years ago that penguins were being used as kindling for whaling station fires. And now, how the tables have turned.
We've finally made it to St Andrews Bay, you know, the busiest beach on the planet. You know, it's funny, when you read about king penguins on paper, you know, you read they dive to 300 meters, 1,000 feet in some of the roughest ocean in the world. And then they come back to here, this kind of blizzard, snow-covered mountainous island to breed. And you meet them, and they're just totally unfazed. Hello.
Some of these adults might not have set foot on land or seen their chicks for 5 months. The worst part is over. They've returned with a belly full of fish. Now they've got to find their kids. Too bad there's a roadblock of elephant seals blocking the way.
This is a filming problem I've never experienced before. Look, I'm trying to film penguins, okay? Stop bumping me. It's really hard, it's a really long lens. Yes, I know you want to play.
The penguins can't be derailed. They've got their mind set on one thing: getting to one of the most spectacular spots on all of South Georgia.
You ready? Ready. Here we go.
Oh. 400,000 king penguins.
In a way, it's almost like a city. It looks, to start with, like just a mass sprawl of penguins, but it's almost organised. I mean, you've got that big swimming pool in the middle, prime swimming for a little wash when you're all stinky. Then on the left, there's a bunch missing a load of feathers. They're in the process of molting, so in our city comparison, I guess we could say that was the hospital. And then start to see a bit of movement. I guess that's their highways through the colony. And then the biggest supermarket in the world, packed full of lanternfish, which is their primary prey here.
And then there's the creche. When the chicks are 5 weeks old, their parents leave them in a kindergarten. Food becomes scarce during the winter, so both of the parents have to go out into the open ocean to hunt. Depending on their luck, they might not return for months. The parents' absence and the brutal weather conditions make the chicks vulnerable. And that's why the giant petrels are here. Giant petrels hunt king penguin chicks by spotting a weak one that's strayed away from the creche. Luckily, this time they have strength in numbers, and the giant petrel can't single one out. As soon as the adults arrive home, they greet their chick.
And then the chick's like, all right, enough with the showing off, now give me some food. And scientists actually found that towards the end of the foraging trips, the bellies of the penguins drop significantly below 37 degrees, which is their normal body temperature. And so they think it's almost like a cool box in their belly to keep the fish fresh, but now to regurgitate it to the chick. Oh, you totally saw the food come out. That's wicked. Slash a bit gross.
Now that the chicks have had their fill, the adults need to go back to the ocean and start again.
And there they go. Back out to sea, off to get another belly full of fish for their chick. And to think that, you know, such a clumsy bird on land can then dive to 300 meters, 1,000 feet is pretty spectacular.
It's clear. These birds are built for the sea. But in or out of the water, few are tougher than the king penguin's cousins, the macaronis. Right now, these macaroni penguins are returning home to feed their young ones. But their chicks aren't waiting in a beachside village. They're at the top of a sheer cliff. Giant waves, razor-sharp rocks, and hungry seals make getting to them no piece of cake.
Right, here we go. Got to think like a penguin, swim like a penguin, be a penguin. Oh, hang on. Dead scat. That would have been awkward.
The Macs seem skittish. With a predator on the hunt, they must aim and shoot to get on land.
These penguins are totally bonkers. They seem to choose the biggest waves to give them a good run up onto the rocks, but whenever they come through, all underwater visibility disappears. So I guess they just must shoot and hope they land on the right rock.
And that's just their first hurdle. They might be tiny, but they're tough to keep up with.
Don't show this to the insurance company.
There's no time to chill. The chicks are waiting for food, and there's still a long way to go. The Macs have to be much more than pro surfers. They need to be mountain climbers too.
Well, after completing their first mission down on the giant wavy rock, they've now got to make their way up to the colony, up to where the nests are. But they've got a bit of a secret route down here. It's like being in some kind of fairy tale.
Mom's made it back. Incredibly, this pair returns to exactly the same nest year after year.
Oh, that's lovely.
Unfortunately, these penguins don't have much family time. And now it's Dad's turn to go out to sea. The trek out to sea is packed full of its own dangers, so the Macs need to tread carefully. Fur seals feed mainly on fish, squid, and krill, but on very rare occasions, they'll even hunt on land.
You know, it's not often you see something that raw. And unfortunately, whilst that little macaroni that was being thrashed around did manage to get away from the first seal, it hasn't survived. It's being eaten by a giant petrel, and that's the circle of life. The giant petrel's got its own chicks to feed. And I think the takeaway from that encounter was not the one that hasn't survived.
It's the one macaroni that then stood up to that same predator and in the face of danger just said, "Come at me, wings out."
You know, the bravery, the sass that these penguins have got is just remarkable, and it will produce chicks that have equal amounts of sass. And that is what natural selection is all about. It's survival of the fittest. Only the best will go on to produce offspring.
But will these sassy penguins be able to evolve fast enough to survive the changing climate? Climate change is affecting ocean currents around South Georgia Island and forcing macaroni penguins to swim further and further for food. Tied to their nesting islands, this ultimately means less food for the chicks. So despite their toughness, macaronis are declining in number. For each new life to begin in the South Atlantic, incredible odds must be overcome. The effects of global warming aren't just a concern in the South Polar region. Up at the planet's north, every winter, a liquid ocean must turn into solid ice. The fate of life here and all across the planet depends on it. It's October in northern Canada, and the days are getting shorter. By now, the summer visitors have fled the frigid north. But Birdie and his crew are heading straight into the heart of it. He's come to film how the animals are faring under the changing conditions in this remote wilderness. Starting with the planet's largest land carnivores, and one of the only predators that have been known to actually hunt humans, polar bears. And right about now, they're hungry. The polar bear's crucial food source is floating 200 miles away, comfortably out of reach. Until the ice forms between them, the hungry bears have no choice but to wait. Our warming climate is delaying the formation of their frozen hunting ground by more than a day each year. That means they have lost at least a month of hunting that previous generations have relied on.
Oh, this guy's a big bruiser, and he's coming in like all the other polar bears. They're coming to the water's edge, ready for the big freeze, but right now the ice isn't quite ready, and you can see him kind of falling through and stumbling under his weight. 4 or 5 months on land starving, not eating anything, and you know that as soon as that sea freezes, that's your fast food buffet is ready. So like this bear, I'd spend a lot of time stood out on the water's edge looking at it.
It's been 4 months since his last meal. The ice can't come soon enough. Polar bears are the apex predator of the Arctic. At up to 1,500 pounds, they're pretty untouchable. But for the bears on this stretch of coastline in the Hudson Bay, things are different. Until the ice freezes, they're trapped with an unlikely and bold rival.
Wolf! Coming over the snowdrift, just on the right. He's going for the bear.
It seems unthinkable that a wolf would take on a predator 4 times its size. There have been rumors that it's happening, but it's never been filmed. If they can catch this bear, it would feed the pack for a week.
There's another one. There's 3. There's a third one coming.
A big pack of wolves could take down a polar bear. But with only 3 against 1, who is predator and who is prey? The hungry bear runs the numbers and decides to attack.
Look at it go, jeez. That bear's got to be overheating. That coat, that's its secret weapon, was got to be a curse now. Oh, it must be cooking. That is not a chase you see every day. I mean, the boldness of these wolves is just ridiculous. Imagine chasing after a polar bear, a massive, really dangerous predator. And then you got to feel for the bear as well. You know, he's got tough enough time as it is, waiting for the sea ice to freeze. Polar bears. Like, when is that ever a good thing that you should try and eat?
Just when things are getting desperate for the bears, relief arrives. The most powerful force in the Arctic starts small, really small, so fragile that it could break in your fingertips. It grows inch by inch, almost when no one's looking. But once it starts, there's no stopping it.
Well, this is what the bears have been waiting for. The temperature has just crashed. The sun's out. It is freezing cold. Can't really feel my lips or my nose. But the important thing is that the sea is starting to freeze. If you look down here, the surface of the water has this kind of slushy layer on it. This is called grease ice. And the wind and the waves are forming this into circles. See, these are pancake ice. And those pancakes over the next few days are going to form into a totally solid layer that the bears can then get out there, out to sea to hunt on.
When the water hits 28.8 Fahrenheit, it doesn't take long for the rest to happen.
And finally, what was thousands of miles of liquid has turned into this rock-solid ice pathway across the ocean. And off it goes out to the edge of the ice. It's amazing to think that most bears in the northern hemisphere, you know, brown bears, black bears, they're all going to sleep now, or they're already asleep. Meanwhile, these polar bears are just starting in one of their most active times. You'd think that the animals that were hardest to film would be the polar bears, you know, the great wanderers. But really, it's these small animals that are proving the most difficult. Definitely playing the waiting game. You got to be so careful not to breathe out on your binoculars like I've just done, because all of the steam goes onto the lenses and then it freezes. And then now, I can't see anything through them. Come on, where are you little guys? Oh wow! You see these Arctic fox bouncing about little bundles of fluff with their little smiley faces. It's so easy to forget that they are, in fact, little killing machines. Right now they're looking for lemmings, a small little brown rodent, which are hidden in their underground layers under the snow. And the fox is using its incredible sense of hearing to basically listen for the little footsteps of the lemming as it moves about under the snow. And then when they found a lemming under the snow, well, they then have a pretty extraordinary hunting strategy. We have totally found an Arctic fox highway. I mean, they're just zipping back and forth, and all around us. I mean, in front of us, there's practically more tracks than there is snow. And these foxes are smart. You know, while the weather's good like this, sun's out, not much wind, it's good hunting conditions, they'll just keep hunting even when they're full. I mean, they're only small, so they can't eat much in one sitting, but they'll keep hunting, and then they're storing it underground, little underground kind of meat lockers, so that when the weather's bad and they can't hunt, they can still live off that.
Over there, red fox. What? See that? The grass islands. It's behind the grass.
Where? You sure it's a red?
Yeah, behind the grass. On the left-hand side.
Got it.
In recent years, the red fox has started invading the Arctic.
Man, they're so much bigger.
They don't just want to claim new territory.
Oh, the Arctic fox.
Wait.
They want to hunt down their competition.
And that Arctic fox is not hanging around. It is gone. I mean, that presence of a red fox is, wow, a big problem for those Arctics. The red's much bigger and it just totally outcompetes the Arctics. And that's really a symbol of the warming climate here. It's allowing the range of the red fox to push further north into the Arctics.
The Arctic fox is forced to search for new hunting ground beyond his shrinking territory. Pushed further north where the sun disappears for months. He'll be hunting underneath nothing but the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. The season of ice has begun. The Arctic sea ice is at its maximum for the year. Here, it's now 20 feet thick.
Well, it's hard to believe right now that we're walking over the ocean, because everywhere you look, as far as you can see, is ice, just solid ice. And that's the reason I've got this incredibly sexy and very fashionable outfit on and a stick, is because we want to make sure we don't fall through a crack in the ice into underneath us, which is hundreds of feet of freezing cold water. But right now we're looking for what is arguably the cutest animal on the planet. And I can hear it. This beautiful little animal, hello, is a harp seal pup, and it was born here on the ice about 4 or 5 days ago, judging by its size. And whilst it's pretty chilled, pretty relaxed with us, it doesn't really know what we are. I'm sure its mum's going to be a lot more nervous, so she's probably around here somewhere underwater. So we're going to back off and see if she wants to come and hang out.
Even while she's raising a pup, a mother seal spends most of her time in the water. Once every few hours, she emerges to feed her pup. But how to find it? In a colony of thousands, she has to be certain which pup is hers.
Oh, there it is. And there's the kiss. This is what harp seals are famous for. That kiss is how the mum and pup recognise each other. Because there aren't just a few mums and pups in this area. They are everywhere, so it's really important that the mum knows how to find the pup and she can recognise it to make sure she's feeding the right pup.
Harp seal mothers have one of the shortest weaning periods of any mammal. In just 10 days, mom will leave her pup behind and never look back. The pup won't know how to hunt, and it won't have anything to eat until it learns. It has to drink as much milk as possible, gaining over 4 pounds per day to store as fat reserves. This will last it just 6 weeks. By then, it'll have to be strong enough to hunt for itself. If the pups can't learn to swim before their home turns from ice to water, they'll drown. Spring in the Arctic is defined by the ice melt. Our changing climate is making early ice breakups increasingly common. A few days could mean the difference between life and death for harp seals. In 2017, the ice broke up so early that the entire colony of pups drowned overnight. The ice is holding so far this year, but the pups still have an incredibly small window to learn to swim before their nursery melts from underneath them.
Well, we found this real chunky monkey is so fat. It's unbelievable the amount of change just in a few days from that tiny little newborn now to a big fat sausage. So it's feeding now and we reckon it might be big enough to go in the water. So we're going to hang out and see if Mum encourages it for its first swimming lesson. So the pups have got their swim coach. I've got my own swim coach. He's keeping me safe. Isn't that right, Norman?
Yes, it's right.
And we've got a system.
Yeah.
If Norman tugs once, that means everything's okay. 2 tugs, there's something to look at. 3 tugs, come back to me. 4 tugs, come back. 4 tugs and more, come back really fast because there's a giant piece of ice about to crush me. Norman, am I good to go?
Yeah, go.
Look how she's using her giant belly as a big swim float to help the pup breathe. You can see she's so protective of it in the water. Anytime any of the other adults come anywhere near it, she chases them off so aggressively. Oh, it's landing so fast. But it's just too buoyant to get down. But it looks so comfortable in the water. It's really doing it. It's swimming.
Now that the mother knows her pup has the skills to survive the icebreaker, it's time for the hardest lesson of all. Saying goodbye. Male harp seals gather nearby, waiting to mate with the females.
Okay, getting in.
It's time for the adults to join and migrate back to the north. If the ice holds long enough, this new generation will one day follow. The Arctic is warming faster than any other place on Earth. If the sea ice goes, not just the bears, but all the creatures that depend on it will follow. Both the top and the bottom of our world may seem far away, but the ice here stabilizes the climate across our whole planet. Without it, humans are in trouble too. But there is hope. If we harness clean energy, use land more efficiently, and replant the forests.
It really is in our hands whether we want this place to exist in the future, because now is really a turning point. Do we let it go, or do we band together to make sure that it survives into the next century?
If hell is the lowest and hottest place in America, and heaven the highest, then everything in between is purgatory. Now, dance with the devil from Death Valley to Mount Whitney. 146 miles of gross scraps, painful naps, and deadly traps. This is a tale of survival between two great extremes. Here lies a valley called Death. It's the hottest place in America. A fine summer's day can hit 130 degrees plus. It has all the desert and desperation you'd expect. Plants have a tenuous grip on life. Animals appear just as stressed. So, when the going gets tough, the tough do a round at the golf course. It's not a mirage, but a surreal, man-made oasis, nurtured by thousands of gallons of underground water. There are hazards here, especially for the wildlife. Only a privileged few coyotes are brave enough to take a swing at this high life. But their rewards are liquid refreshments, and maybe a birdie. problem is, roadrunners don't just run. Another young coyote takes a shot close to a water hazard. A flock of ibis. This lake may be the most lethal trap on the course. His scorecard's not looking too good. He may need some more lessons from Mom. A coyote pup that can't fend for itself wants whatever Mom brings home. If that's not enough, forget golf. The pup that scored the old deer skull draws attention. Real flesh and bone is a prized possession in Coyote Land. To keep something like a rabbit skin, you gotta turn it into buried treasure. But a pirate watches. There's nothing worse than taking your eye off the ball. The 19th hole is what golfers call the bar. And there's one out here offering a top-shelf cocktail. A single date palm tree can produce 300 pounds of dates. The ripest treats litter the ground. Their sweet smell is a siren song. And fruit flies answer. But there's a problem. After a long journey through the desert, they risk overdoing it. Each date is almost 80% sugar, which ferments in the sun. The results are intoxicating. The fun fruit fly party gets out of hand. And this is a bad place for a bender. Below is a sobering sand trap. It reminds everyone that Death Valley includes the D word. This alien-looking insect larva is called an antlion. It digs its home with steep walls. All he needs is a tipsy fruit fly to stagger close by. One wrong step, and there's no escape. The antlion's jaws grip like a vice. And more, they are hollow, like syringes. It injects powerful enzymes deep inside its prey. They liquefy the fly's insides. After the enzymes are done, the antlion reverses the flow, sucking out every last bit of goo. Soon, the fly is nothing more than an empty shell. After ditching the evidence, it readies itself for the next drunken victim. The antlion will continue to trap its food for years to come. Eventually, it'll transform into a large, harmless fly itself and buzz off to discover the harsh realities of life beyond this oasis. Death Valley is the lowest point in North America and the hottest. The golf course sits in the middle of this sun-baked park. Yet travel just 105 miles west, and you reach Mount Whitney, the highest point in the lower 48, and still rising. The path between these points is a journey of great extremes. Some folks can't wait to check it out. Once a year, madmen and women line up in Death Valley to do the unthinkable. 100 athletes from 20 states and 19 different countries compete in perhaps the world's most grueling foot race. The Badwater Ultramarathon is 135 miles long. It starts at Badwater Basin, 280 feet below sea level. Only one way to go from here: up. The humans are doing it tough. Not everyone out here is in such a hurry. You might say this is no country for old men. But for one old-timer out here, it's a different story. After more than 40 years in California's Death Valley, this old tortoise has learned a trick or two about survival in the desert. Like seize the shade while you have it. He's just a bit bigger than a football. And he grows less than 1/8 of an inch each year. He forages when it's cooler, especially in spring and fall, and feasts on grass, flowers, and shrubs. Even some cactus now and then. If he's lucky, there's some moisture in the plants he eats. But he can also go a full year without a drink. He's not in any speed race. Flat out, It takes him around 5 hours to cover a single mile. But he is built for off-road endurance. Those limbs may look a bit clunky, but they are powerful tools, with strong claws for his most important duty. He digs burrows to escape the heat. Some go as deep as 6 feet. This trip topside is more of an anomaly. Desert tortoises spend an incredible 95% of their lives underground. Come winter, he may share a den with several others, and maybe find a mate for the spring. Nothing escapes the sun in Death Valley. It defines life from the rocky outcrops to the fine sand of the dunes. When the sun peaks in the sky, the ground can exceed 200 degrees Fahrenheit, almost hot enough to boil blood. That's why those marathon runners began in the cool of the evening, and now run into the dark. It's the best way to beat the heat. In winter, Death Valley night temperatures can drop to below freezing. But it's mid-July. At 3 a.m., it's still in the 70s. Just off the road, other creatures of the night also take advantage of the temperature dip. The desert kangaroo rat is built to survive in this unforgiving world. She has special kidneys that dispose of waste without sacrificing much water. And unlike all other mammals, she doesn't sweat to keep cool. Her ears, although small, can detect almost any approaching predator. Helpful when danger glides across the dunes. They call him Sidewinder, one of the desert's deadliest gunslingers. He packs 2 fangs, capable of delivering a venomous bite. The sand is still painfully hot, but this rattler has adapted. By moving side to side instead of slithering, he only ever makes contact with 2 points of his body at a time. The kangaroo rat also gets a lot of airtime. She can jump up to 9 feet in one hop as she bounces through the brush on her hunt for seeds. When these two face off, it all comes down to the quickest draw. The Sidewinder is one of the most dangerous creatures in California's Death Valley. The kangaroo rat, within striking distance, is in big trouble. Close, but no strike. The kangaroo rat manages to dodge death. Almost all of these encounters favor her lightning-fast reflexes. The Sidewinder looks for another meal. And sure enough, at dawn, he finds a second duel. But this Roadrunner is no chicken. Around here, she's the law. It's fang versus beak. The Sidewinder may have deadly venom, but the Roadrunner is fearless. This hero of the West barely blinks an eye. And she keeps on running. The sun rises after 5 a.m. And so does the mercury. Soon, it's 98 degrees. As the ultramarathon runners pass the 40-mile marker, many slow to a walk. No athlete can run 135 miles non-stop, especially in the hottest place in America. Runners can drink close to a gallon of fluid every hour. They call out for hydration. Behind them, the Mesquite Sand Dunes. Here, and throughout Death Valley, iconic mountains of sculpted sand hide among the landscape. Some are more than 600 feet high and constantly reforming. They move with the wind. Plants on the edges don't survive long once a dune moves their way. They are a sight to behold. And in one case, also a sound. The Eureka Dunes near the north end of the park sing aloud with a booming voice. This is what they sound like. The sand grains of Eureka Dune are drier and more loosely packed than most. And they're mixed with very little dust. When they shift, the friction between them creates an acoustic airwave. That sounds like a groan or a hum, sometimes a boom. It's a Death Valley serenade. Inside dunes like this, one of the park's best equipped creatures prepares to meet the day. He uses the rays of the sun to get his juices flowing. And once the coast is clear, this is the Mojave fringe-toed lizard, a master of desert survival. He's got the best camouflage in North America, so it's hard to distinguish this medium-sized lizard from the sand surrounding him. Flaps over his ears and nose, along with overlapping eyelids, work like valves to block pesky sand. But his best feature just might be his namesake. Those fringed toes. A special adaptation that helps him stay above the sand. Comb-like scales on the edge of his toes turn this lizard's feet into snowshoes on sand. So he runs without burning his feet. He doesn't even sink below the surface, thus giving the fringed-toed lizard one more advantage: speed. The fastest was clocked at 23 miles per hour. At that speed, the lizard is almost completely on 2 feet. Temps skyrocket. The Mojave fringed-toed lizard must call it a day. So he heads to the coolest place he can find, where no one even knows he's there. Few can handle the midday heat out in the open. But the fringed-toed lizard has a cousin who is a most extraordinary exception. In California's Death Valley, the desert horned lizard must hunt when his prey is active. And he's picky. He really only eats one thing: ants. Ants for breakfast, ants for lunch, and ants for dinner. Harvester ants make up 90% of the desert horned lizard's diet. But these insects are pretty tough themselves. And they have numbers on their side. Each colony has around 10,000 individuals, and each individual packs a painful bee-like sting. Some ants will scurry more than 40 yards to collect seeds for the nest. So the lizard has the best luck on the outskirts of the colony and plucks off a passerby. But he can't afford to fall asleep on the job. A couple spot him and fearlessly move in. His scales are as tough as nails. Fingernails, that is. Each one is like a mini shield. But a harvester ant can get under anyone's skin. And then bite in. It's an alarm clock with a piercing wake-up call. The human runners out here are also suffering. Most of the Badwater ultramarathon runners are still going. But at 70 miles in, the long, hot road to the base of Mount Whitney takes its toll. By the end of the race, 1/4 will have dropped out. The option plays on the mind. They have more than 50 miles to go when they exit the national park, with still plenty of desert to endure. Not even realizing they're moving past a lake. Owens Lake. At least this is what passes for a lake around here. 120 years ago, water filled this salty basin. And towns and mines surrounded it. But engineers built an aqueduct to divert the flow to Los Angeles. And arsenic from the ancient lake bed turned it into a toxic dust bowl. Too dangerous to inhale. Now, to solve that problem, engineers have turned the tap back on. And life is returning with the water. Starting with brine flies. They hatch here in April and throughout the summer. And then, birds come to eat them. Gulls, ibis, and a host of others on the wing. The natives are welcome back, but some visitors here are outsiders. The miners who used to work this area left behind more than waste and ruins. They're most likely the ones who introduced a most destructive new species. These are feral burros. These wild donkeys travel up to 40 miles a day throughout California's Death Valley area in search of anything green. They use roads, the paths of least resistance, to skip the rockiest terrain, and often head towards Mount Whitney. They're wasteful eaters and quickly destroy plants that take years to grow. Worse still, the burros are prolific breeders. Herds can double in size in 4 or 5 years. 500,000 burros now roam the countryside. Their invasion is bad news for some residents of the Death Valley area. The largest native animal in these parts, the desert bighorn sheep. These shore-footed nomads comb the hillsides for the most nutritious plants, shrubs, and even cactus. But their main goal is to find water. They need to find a spring or a water hole every 3 days to survive the summer heat. But with that, they can climb ever higher towards the cool mountain air. The ultramarathon runners have the same idea. They start at below sea level at the lowest point in the United States. Now, they are at 4,000 feet altitude and still climbing. The mountains ahead mark their finish line at the base of Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the lower 48 states. Along the road to Whitney, a host of all-terrain animals that can handle the desert and the heights. Coyotes are tough enough to hunt up here. This is likely a breeding pair, and they work together to track down prey. Not such good news for their favorite menu item. Desert hares are also climbers. Some black-tailed jackrabbits hang out at elevations up to 12,000 feet. But they are best known as desert dwellers. And they have a body to suit. Those ears act like an air conditioner. It's where they release their excess body heat. Those bunny ears are so good at what they do. These hares don't need to pant or sweat, and that saves water. The only thing more important to this guy than his big ears are his big feet. With those coyotes getting closer, they're his best chance for escape. The chase is on. Black-tailed jackrabbits are speed demons. Not much moves faster through the desert below California's Mount Whitney, especially when that black tail is being chased by a couple of coyotes. These rabbits can reach 40 miles an hour and zigzag through any terrain to throw off a rival. If he has to, he can cover 20 feet in a single leap. Today, it's enough to throw off the coyotes. For them, it's back to the grind. Not all coyotes are lucky enough to score a luxury resort. More often out here, it's like this. Hot as hell, chasing elusive jackrabbits. You have to get water when you can, wherever you can. A leaky pipe couldn't be better. It's also a single drop shower. And when the rabbits are too darn fast, there's always the spoils from Highway 34. Tourists drop all manner of food just for the coyotes. It's a quick feed that does more harm than good. She's lured close to the road. The most dangerous place for a coyote in all of Death Valley. If a coyote, or any animal, gets hit by a car, they can expect to be mopped up by an unsavory cleanup crew. Turkey vultures. Already they seem to wonder what roadkill coyote might taste like. Most of them wait above the road to Mount Whitney, with little interest in the living. They've chosen one of the only trees around for a roost. The desert conditions are unbearable for most, but these vultures have a trick up their sleeves. Or rather, down their legs. They pee on themselves to keep from overheating. A process called urohydrosis. The urine is also a disinfectant that kills germs on their feet. Handy when you tuck your talons into dead things for a living. Time for work. Meet the Vulture Club. Members climb on thermals of hot air that rise around California's Mount Whitney. The turkey vulture's 6-foot wingspan makes it look easy. They can soar as far as 200 miles, if the wind is right. Each turkey vulture relies on its powerful sense of smell. One homes in on a new scent. A jackrabbit met an untimely end. The vulture does its best to eat quickly. Other dinner guests are never far behind. Their stomach acid is at least 10 times stronger than our own. Their biggest worry isn't fast food, but a fast car. Just up the road, the snow-marked peaks of the High Sierras are a welcome sight for the ultramarathon runners. They've covered 122 grueling miles to get this far. Just 13 more to go. "13 miles in another world." It's steep as they head through the town of Lone Pine. Some are down to a walk, but that's better than a crawl. With aching joints and pounding feet, they cross the finish line. They celebrate the end of a grueling journey. From the lowest and hottest place in America to the highest and one of the coldest peaks in the lower 48. The runners learn what the animals here have long known. Life in this corridor is less about a race and more about survival. Even the luxury golf course has more traps than meet the eye. Most creatures have to fight for life. Every day is a scramble, where animals have to watch each step and beat the heat as best they can. The 146-mile path to Mount Whitney offers some relief. But more extremes await at the other end. And a wrong turn can be your last. But survive this one, and you know you've done something incredible. You've conquered the path of two great extremes.